My name is Mary Lynn Rook, and I'm here today with Suzanne Aubois at her home at 86 Washington Street in Newport. Today's date is March 7th, and it's 2 p.m., and we're sitting here looking out at this beautiful blue sky, and Suzanne is gracious enough to share with us her stories of what brought her to America and to the point. Suzanne, would you like to share some of your stories with us?
C'est avec plaisir. So I will continue in English. I'm very pleased to see you here in my own house. And I wanted to tell you why a French woman lives now on Washington Street with her family. I came to America in 1949. My parents have decided to move to Vermont, where my father's business was settled there. After a few months in Vermont, my mother did not really want to stay, and they went back to Paris.
There was a big difference between Paris and Vermont. I'm sure that was difficult.
It was difficult for her, and also for my mother. She never understood how my father and myself liked America. It's also because my maiden name is Welte, W-E-L-T-E, which has a background of family who love to travel.
Ah.
In fact, in the end of 1890 or so, one of our ancestors, and great uncle, went to Louisiana as a young priest to help in the French villages in Louisiana. Then my father came to see him, and my father stayed there, went to school, left America when he was 17, and became really half French and half American. My mother never followed that trend.
He shared that with you, didn't he?
So he shared that with me. And after the war, when my husband died, I was just married before the war, but we were married 6 years. My husband died, and I had 3 children. In that time, I had to depend of my father's family to live with them, since I didn't have any money. So when they decided to move to Springfield, Vermont, where my father expected to retire and stay there, I went with him, and so my sister, who was not married. So all his family were under the protection and the kindness of the people for my father's used to work for them, really.
So they were your sponsors?
They were our sponsors.
Yeah.
So we stayed in Springfield 2-3 months. I was very happy there. But mother decided that they should go back to Paris and not to stay in Springfield, and find a place not too far in between Springfield and New York. We thought of living, my sister...
You mean...
Providence.
Oh, so what you're saying is your parents went back to Paris, and your sister went to New York, and you stayed in Vermont.
I stayed in Vermont just for a... I must say that my 3 children did not know one word of English when we arrived in Vermont. But I was probably a very tough mother. We arrived in Springfield, Vermont on a Friday, and the next Monday I drove my 3 children to the public school in the town. It makes quite a little story in the village, in the town. But it's been very good because they started to learn English right away without any complication as they seem to do now for foreigners here. So we find out, we did remember, since we learn our French history, that near Providence was the place where the French landed for coming to the help of the freedom of America. We knew that they landed about 8,000 people, soldiers, I mean, and so we decided to go and see it.
You're referring to Newport.
We came to Newport. We were very, it was a very great surprise for us to be able to stay in a convent at the end of Washington Street. We heard about that convent, which was basically a French starting anyway.
What was the name of the convent?
The Cenacle.
Oh, the Cenacle.
So we stepped at the Cenacle just for a few and stayed there for 2 days. And then we just took a walk on Washington Street and we decided this is where we should stay. And we saw, of course, the Hunter House. And the door of the Hunter House was all open because there were people who were working in it. It was in a too good shape. But we saw also that it was the headquarters of the French Navy, and we thought this is really interesting. And we heard that nobody lived there, and at the beginning of the society, we are looking for renting apartment in the place.
Is this the Preservation Society?
Preservation Society.
Was it called the Hunter House then?
Was called the Hunter House.
It's always been called the Hunter
Yeah.
House? Oh, I didn't know that.
Of course, the Mrs. The name of it. We were quite welcome in the beginning.
So you did
Since-
take an apartment at the Hunter
Yes.
House at that point?
We live on the 2nd and 3rd floor. And it was understood with the society that we will keep the 1st floor as a museum
Yes.
and not interfere with the hope that the museum will be starting. I think it was a great excitement for all of us, and nothing very new. The setting was not so new for us, since when we were visiting our parents in Paris, the old house we lived in was built in 1630.
Uh-huh.
So my children just went into this old place, just like going home.
It was a comfortable place.
Very comfortable for us, except that we did not know that the heating system was not installed.
Oh, no.
We did not know that even the front door did not have a key, and we had to close the door with a bar. Plus, we had to depend of all the people who were interested to reorganize the museum and also repair the house.
Now, what did you do for heat?
Well, by and by, and anyway, we were 4 years without heat, so we could put up. We were in this was the landing was in September, so it was no problem for us. We didn't think of it. In fact, when I come to think of it now, I realized that it was a strange idea to live in a museum which was not for which they didn't have too much money, and we had to pay a year in advance to help to finish the repairing.
Wow, so you paid your rent in advance.
Yeah, we didn't know what we were doing. We loved the place. My 3 kids had their own bedroom, and we all had a lot of space. And I say we were not worried about how the winter will be.
Because it was September.
It was September.
Now, were there neighbors near you at that time?
Yes, the Bensons were not too far away. So Fisher became very interested to come and help us, and took me in town to see where I should market. So it was very nice. And the problem has been right away to put my 3 children in school, and I choose to take them to the school run by the sisters on Washington Square.
What was the name of that school? Do you remember?
There's something memorial.
I don't even know where that's located. Where was that located?
Well, the school is demolished now.
Oh, the
It's
building is no longer even there.
No longer, in the back.
Was it near the courthouse?
Yes, very near the court, but it was in the back, exactly, of the movie,
The Opera House?
the Opera House.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
It's too bad it's no longer there.
Yeah. Well, it was not very interesting, but for the sisters, it was very. They were interested to take care of 3 French kids right away.
Sure.
1 in each class, and it worked pretty well.
How old were your children at that time?
Well, the oldest was 11, then that's the boy, John, and then came Marie, who was not exactly 9 years old, and the youngest one, Vincent, who really became a part of Washington Street in a few days.
Oh, that's
He
wonderful.
loved it.
Now, were they able to walk then? From
They
our
walked
house?
there. They
Right.
were used to. A French kid never expected in that time to have a car or a bus or
Right.
anything. So that worked out pretty well. But soon we realized things were not too satisfied to be a part of a museum.
That's understandable.
We didn't have much freedom, since it was very. I understood very well that the Preservation Society wanted to repair and do things, but up to a point. And so when we realized that an old beaten house on Washington Street, which is 86, was for sale. The price was very good, I mean, not much. And my father, we called, of course, for help on the other side. And my father decided to buy the house.
Did he see it before he
No,
bought it?
no,
Just
he
said,
just trust me,
good.
my sister. Well, soon enough, my sister decided to get married with an American here.
And now you had moved into your house?
And we decided to move in this house, because then the planning was she could have the first floor, which is the main floor really, and for myself and the children, we really took the second and the third floor.
And it's a beautiful house.
And it's the situation, we wanted to be near the water, and certainly here we are.
Yes, you are. Looking out at the green light.
Green light, that's right.
Narragansett Bay.
Narragansett Bay, exposed to the wind as we are, we were not used to, but the fact we were all brought up with the time where in France it was the war. I mean, for me it was the First World War time, for my parents, and for my children, life was they find it no problem to get used to living here.
That's wonderful. Now we're looking out at Narragansett Bay today, and because of the time of year, we're not seeing any boats. But when you first bought this house, what did you look out at?
Oh, there were big boats. They were Navy boats.
Ships?
The ship, they were there, and we could hear even their movies sometimes. And once we were invited by a captain, for me and the kids, to have supper aboard ship.
Oh, how exciting.
And just because they were landing not too far from here, and we just thought it would be interesting to have a French woman, of course, and the children.
That's fun.
That was good.
Now, did they come in on a small boat, like a tender, and take you out?
Oh, yes.
Or a dinghy?
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Oh, yes.
tender, yeah.
Well, that was an exception.
Right.
It didn't
Yeah.
happen too often.
Uh-huh.
Well, this went on for only 2 years until 2 years since the Hunter House.
You were here
And
for
then
2
after
years?
that, we were here in this house since 1949.
Wow. Oh, so you lived in the Hunter
I
House
live in
for
the,
2 years.
yes.
and
My
then you-
parents owned this house since
Right.
1949.
That's wonderful.
With, I must say, a lot of work for which we had no idea.
Mm-hmm. Was this house?
Was in bad shape.
It was in bad shape.
This house, apparently during the war, and the war was not so far, really,
Mhm.
had been used as a sort of a home for some Italian Italian officers, Navy
Officers?
officers, who were here in Newport when the war started. So they could not go back. And they were under control of the police.
Really?
Yeah. And not so long time ago, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, an old gentleman rang the bell and said to me, could I look at this house inside? And he said, I am an old Italian who lives in Providence now, and we were a dozen of officers, all here. Also the Italians in the beginning of before they went into the war, were well known for torpedoes and underwater work. This is what I understood.
Now, the torpedo station was on Goat Island at that time.
Yes, it was very dirty.
Yes.
And when we saw it demolished, of course, we were very happy. We never thought we would get a nearly bad building as the torpedo itself. Great surprise.
Yes. So, did you want to share with us some of the stories about your neighbors? Or
And this is really what I would like, especially White, to mention. We did find a very nice group of people, ready to wonder first why we were there, but once they knew us, we became very, very friendly, and really Washington Street became our. We were very happy.
it was your community?
Yeah. Mm.
It's wonderful that you've had an opportunity to live here
I think
for
it
such
was.
a long time.
Though the house was in bad shape, we were having a pretty good time, really, going from one floor to the others,
Mm-hmm.
and also to the very secret things.
Oh, you had secret passages?
Well, we did. One day I heard a very big screaming, and I knew the noise was coming from the wall on the second floor. Then I realized that also that inside the wall where the screaming of my son Vincent and of the youngest Benson. Both of them were good friends. They have discovered in the basement a
Maybe like a crawl space?
no, the place where you carried when food.
A dumbwaiter?
A dumbwaiter.
Yes.
And they decided, for some reason, to go into it
Oh no.
and try it. And they never could get out.
Oh
I had a hard time to manage the rope and to get those two guys out.
How old were they then?
They were 7 or 8.
Oh,
Yes,
that is so
there are
funny.
7 stories with the family of the Bensons in that time.
So your children were the same age as the Benson children, or was it just your youngest?
No,
son?
you about the same age.
All about the same.
About the
Were there
same.
other children living on the street at that time?
Not too many. There is another one, was a girl, and Mrs. McLeod had a daughter, Jane, and Jane was about the age of my daughter. And in that time, Mrs. McLeod was very pleased to see a little girl coming, because there were very few girls in children in this. Well, I realized right away when I first came to talk to people that in Newport that the Point had been a very poor section
Yes.
and in very bad. It was not a nice thing to choose to live in the Point
At that time.
at that time. But we didn't pay any attention to that. And in fact, we knew we had the water and the old house. And soon we decided to be practically, we became very quickly used to
That's
the
wonderful.
life. In
It's wonderful that you're able to see ahead, because look at what we have
Well,
now.
again, you know, I think the war, it's a good thing. Maybe not nice to go through a war, but it teaches you something. You have to get used to everything
Yes.
and
Yes.
not worry about it.
And that's one thing that you experience that most Americans don't, because we have never had a war fought on our soil
Yes.
other than the American Revolution. And so you lived through that before coming here.
That's right. And
Yes.
I had no idea. I remember when the war started, I asked my mother, who just had been through the other one, the First World War, how was it, life during the war? She said, "Don't worry, you're going to learn pretty soon."
Yeah.
And that's the thing to do.
Wow. Talking about adapting ways and how much you learned during your time when you were in France during the war. Do you want to talk a little bit more about coming here and what happened? You were talking about
Well, I
your
think
history.
it has been wonderful to see how my kids and myself got used to so quickly to the American way of life, which is probably much easier for foreigners coming to America than it is for the American going to Europe.
really
It is now, I understand that when what we feel is hospitality in France is first the respect of the independence of the neighbor.
Yes.
We never go to see a neighbor. You will never think in France to prepare a soup or a cake or something and bring it to the new neighbor, because we feel that the first thing is to respect their independence. And because of that, when you arrive in an American village, we are surprised to see that people are ready to come and see you.
And welcome you.
And welcome you. And so that's probably what we enjoyed when we came here with my kids. And of course, there were few things we loved, my kids loved, was the Corval's house with 3 girls in it, where my 3 kids, 3 boys my boys went to see there. Also the McLeod, also many Navy friends who became very quickly friends with me, because for some of them, their relationship with the family in Newport was not always very easy. It was easier for me because I was also a foreigner like they were. Also, some of them were interested to know what was the life in France, because it was the time where the NATO was in France.
Yes.
Also, we used to go to the Navy Chapel as a Catholic, and we enjoyed the contact with some of the Navy family there. When we were in the Hunter House, I was especially interested to know more about the men who really took care of all the French Navy to come here. And it was called the Admiral de Ternay. Many people forget that it's not Rochambeau or Lafayette who had the responsibility to bring all the soldiers and all the move of the help that the French brought and gave to the America in that period.
Yes.
Well, you know that the Admiral de Ternay was sick when he came here. He had been involved in many colonial organization in France in that time, mostly sent to India, the coast of India, but also all over to the coast to Canada. So he became sick here. He died in a Hunter House and was buried, as everybody knows, in the Trinity Church yard, since no other churches existed in that time.
I wasn't aware of that.
And like Rochambeau, he had his chateau and his family in France. We know we kept a great deal of details of all the people who lived and the officers who came to America in that time.
Now, did you learn this while you were living in France, or you studied?
I did learn quite a lot of it, because one of the family of the Ternay was a very close friend of mine.
Oh.
And this is the reason also why we knew more or less that if history was not the same in America than in France, because we had many more years,
Yes.
that Newport was an exception.
Yes.
And I have been working after that in several meetings and
With the Historical
Society. I happened to translate several things from English into French or from French into English.
That's wonderful.
And we do know now, and we take the map of Newport, we know who lived there. We lived, of course, everybody knows where Rochambeau and de Ternay, and also all in several offices. And there is a little map of, I translated, which tells who lives where.
And so is that used today by the Historical Society on their walking tours?
I don't know.
You don't know?
No. I left the historical... No, I don't really think they know about it, I'm sure, because there had been in 1981, a special celebration of the Year of the French.
So you were involved then?
And I was involved then.
You were also involved, you said, with creating the first point association.
Oh, that's another story. Well, since at that time I was not working, I did not